Welcome to the Longevity Optimization Podcast, where we discuss longevity, optimal health, nutrition, peak performance, cognitive excellence, and so much more. Dr. Beth, it is such a pleasure to have you here with me today.
You so much. Yeah, pleased to be here.
Absolutely. You have, an incredibly innovative center, essentially like a biology upgrading center. But before we dive into all of the most exciting longevity therapies, I would love to hear a little bit more about your background. What led you to such an innovative practice?
Well, starting back very early, I had a sense of uh, our connection to the electromagnetic field when I
Mm.
was like 4 years old. I was very aware
Wow.
of this and had a sense that we were forgetting a lot of what we once knew, that the body really had incredible healing potential, and there really wasn't one day we could evolve again to the point where we didn't need disease to be our teacher. And I kind of watched some people very close to me die of neurodegenerative diseases as I was growing up. And that was difficult to watch because I cared deeply about these people, but also I felt it wasn't necessary,
Mm.
that there should be a way to reverse these diseases and, prevent them. So that was really frustrating to watch and heartbreaking. And then went into medical school with a full knowing that I would practice something different than what I was being taught. Like I knew
Mm.
that I would have an integrative practice, and I got really involved in actually what was then called complementary alternative medicine, and was uh, part of a task force in the early 90s that kind of was deciding how to integrate complementary alternative medicine into the health science curricula at University of Minnesota, where I was doing medical school. And we started a department, we started a clinic. So that was kind of before that was happening anywhere else, like, before Harvard, before UCSF was doing it. And so, yeah, just kind of hit the ground running in an integrative practice in 1998, and started off more in the realm of physical medicine because I was working with kind of bioidentical hormones and natural neurotransmitter balancing. I was doing a lot of functional kind of work. I was the first crop of doctors that went through functional medicine training back there
Mm.
in 1998 or 9. And so I was thinking very holistically, but kind of mostly on a physical level. And then in 2004, I got Lyme disease myself.
Oh,
And
wow.
I had to think very broadly in order to get through it. So I kind of moved beyond just the physical level to also be looking at kind of our energetic anatomy, what we hold in our energetic system, how our bodies are shaped and formed by the beliefs that we adopt about ourselves early in life because of our childhood programming and our familial and cultural programming. And so that began a period of kind of deep inquiry and reevaluation of these kind of beliefs to see if they still served me. And so it was an intense period of growth. And then I because of that, I got into kind of looking at energy medicine, physics, and then biophysics, the biophysics of the body. And so that kind of led me to be an early adopter of a lot of the biohacking technologies that we use today, because they're really rooted in a biophysical level.
Wow, that's amazing. Is it true that a lot of Western medicine doesn't even recognize Lyme disease?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still the case. It's still the case, yeah. And, or if they recognize it at all, they think of it as a fairly uncomplicated infection that can be treated with 3 weeks of doxycycline, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
It's very, what I see a lot of times are people that have kicked around the medical establishment for a long time with a whole slew of chronic issues that no one thought were connected with Lyme. And so they were kind of misdiagnosed over the years. And or people that, were given those 3 weeks of antibiotics and said, now you're done, but they clearly weren't. And so I'll see a lot of people that I, will kind of diagnose with Lyme, but not only Lyme, co-infections that can be communicated by the same tick bite, like with Bartonella or Babesia or Ehrlichia or Rickettsia, or people that have existing issues that are complicating their recovery. Like, let's say they were exposed to mold, or they now have, from the stress of this, a hormonal imbalance, and they maybe have reactivated viral infections. And so you have to take a very broad look, even just on a physical level, to help people really heal from these things.
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth with the co-infections and the mold exposure. Do we think that if someone has Lyme and then they're exposed to mold, is it because their defenses are already down and then the mold is more impactful on them? Or how does that kind of happen?
I think it's honestly just bad luck if there's a co-exposure. There is genetic differences between individuals, and some people, like, you can have, let's say, a husband, wife living in the same house, sleeping in the same bedroom, having the same exposures. And one person gets really sick from mold and one person doesn't. And that has a little bit to do with genetic differences around the clearance of mycotoxins out of the system.
Hmm.
So one of the most common ways that mold affects people is by its mycotoxins. So mold produces toxins that are direct mitochondrial poisons, actually. And, they have different effects. Some are immunosuppressive, some are cardiotoxic, some are really bad for the brain, but they all have, bad effects in the body. And some people are more adept at clearing those out, and other people are not, based on their genetics. And so then you can see differences in couples and in family members and things like that.
Yeah, it's so ironic because actually genetically my husband has impaired detoxification pathways, whereas I don't. So the example that you gave that, if we had mold in our home, it could significantly impact him more probably than me. So
Yeah.
it's so interesting.
Mm.
Just because we started with Lyme and we won't go super deep into it, what is Lyme and what are some of the potential symptoms? I know it's kind of like it could be a wide array of symptoms, right?
Yeah. So Lyme is caused by a bacteria called, well, the original species was called Borrelia burgdorferi. And now there are many other species of Borrelia that you can get in the United States and elsewhere. But it is a spirochetal bacteria, and spirochetal bacteria are known as the great imitators. The first example of that was syphilis, which was caused by a spirochetal bacteria.
Hmm.
And the reason for it's called that is that these bacteria have multiple stages in their life cycle. So there's a spirochete form, which looks like a little corkscrew that kind of goes around your system, and then it can burrow into your cells existing in a different form. So an intracellular form, it can exist outside of your cells in something called a round body. It can exist in biofilms, where it kind of comes with other Borrelia organisms and forms these super colonies that are like little spaceships in your blood and in your tissues. And so they can have varieties of manifestations, but at an intracellular level, when they go inside your cells, they are actually small enough and capable of suppressing mitochondrial energy production, reducing the amount of energy that your mitochondria can make, those little energy factories in the cells. And so it can manifest basically any way in any person. And of course, the manifestation is influenced by whether or not the person has co-infections, viruses, or mold, or hormonal imbalances, and all of that, but also influenced by emotional holding patterns, previous trauma, that, like beliefs about yourself that affect how you hold yourself, affect your posture and kind of habitual positions you hold yourself. Like if you have, like, for example, like a head forward position, shoulders up, you're going to have a lot of tension in your head and neck, and probably the bacteria is going to go right there and hide in those areas that don't have as much flow of chi or circulation, so that your immune system is having a harder time getting in there.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
so if someone, because the symptoms are just so vast, do you just recommend, doing a test to kind of be able to diagnose Lyme? Is that what you typically do?
Yeah, and there are certain things that kind of clue myself in, and other doctors that kind of specialize in this. Like if someone has a known tick bite, that's helpful.
Hmm.
If they got sick suddenly after spending time in nature, or they have a dog and they pull tickles off their dog all the time, that's important. Yeah, but classic manifestations of Lyme would be uh, fatigue, joint pain, brain fog, flu-like feeling, those
Hmm.
types of things. So if someone has these, I would almost, and they have like a reliable history, I would probably do some good testing around it.
Amazing. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And let's get into longevity. Not that, obviously, if you have any sort of illness, I mean, like Lyme or any other chronic illness, it's going to contribute to your longevity. So we weren't too off topic, but what would you say are the main pillars of longevity, and what is kind of like your intake process with a new patient at Jyzen that is wanting to optimize longevity?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's lifestyle pillars, I think. So there's sleep. What's your sleep quality? Because we know that you're going to age better if you have good deep sleep, and you have um, few awakenings at night. And if you're resting calmly, where your heart rate variability is nice and high and your heart rate is low when you're sleeping, these things are going to be huge for longevity. And exercise. What are you exercising? What's your program like? Are you exercising in a way that's right for your body? And then what's your diet like? That varies. There's no one diet that's right for every person, but like, are you eating the diet that's right for your biochemistry, allowing you to remain metabolically flexible, allowing you to supply all the nutrients that you need and not have to deal with a lot of like food in additives and pesticides and things like that? And do you meditate? You meditate? Because it's kind of taking me back to what I was just saying. Like, it allows you to clear your energetic anatomy, kind of tune in at a deep level to where you're holding things in your system. What's your attitude like? Are you aware of these kind of underlying pervasive, um, you know, kind of feelings that you have about yourself? And are you drinking enough water? What's the quality of water like that you're drinking? Do you spend time outside getting exposed to sunlight? Are you spending time in nature? So those are kind of like 7 pillars I always think about for people from a lifestyle standpoint, because we have all the biohacking. We actually have the largest suite of biohacking technologies under one roof in the world at
Hmm.
Jyzen, as what we've been told by so many people that travel the world. Um, but if you don't have those 7 pillars kind of optimized for yourself, it they're only going to help you so far, is what I think.
Yeah.
But once you've done that and your lifestyle is really, really shaped up in a way that supports your health and allows for healthy aging, then you can benefit from hormone balancing, peptide therapy, and different types of the technologies that are really good for improving mitochondrial function. And whether it's NADIVs, supplements, red light therapy, intermittent hypoxic treatment, cryotherapy, exercising with oxygen, et cetera, which we can get into all of those.
In your experience, what's the best therapy for trauma?
Right. That's an area I continue to explore for people, because there is no one right therapy, but it's such an important area that I think defines the health of almost every individual. But I would say plant medicine holds incredible promise, because it allows for a more expanded perspective.
Hmm.
And it allows people to kind of almost objectively like stand back, look at the things that they've experienced, get a better read on or sense of how they affected them, you know, how
Hmm.
those experiences affected them, and then what's lingering in their life because of it, how that shaped their life. And then it gives the person the opportunity and freedom to make different choices about, you know, what they're going to believe about themselves, what choices they're going to make in life. You know, I think about like these traumas kind of being stored in our system and almost like being these cloudy lenses through which people kind of view the world. It's going to
Hmm.
affect how you view life situations. It's going to affect how you uh, project onto and affect your perceptions of your interactions with other people and situations. So when you're able to kind of clear these cloudy lenses, it just liberates a person to, you know, kind of see the world as it is, not as they think it is based on their injuries and traumas.
Yeah, I love that. I'm excited to see too, just, us to get more data on these therapies and even like, ketamine therapy and integration. So, yeah, I agree because, stress and trauma are, I think, the two most difficult pillars. In terms of health optimization because you can just stock your fridge with organic super healthy foods and you can eat them and you can put the exercise in your calendar every day and you can do it if you have the discipline to do these things. But I think that the trauma and the stress pieces, and I'm sure you see this all the time with your patients, are the most difficult because it's emotional, right? It's not just something that you're doing on a daily basis. So I'm excited for us to find just more clarity even on how we can expediently, hopefully, resolve some of those issues.
Yeah, and I think like one easy thing that most people can do to one degree or another is meditate.
Mm.
Because when you're meditating, if it's especially if it's not, you know, some people meditate and they're going out of their bodies and trying to almost astral project or something like that. But what I really prefer is to get people more grounded within their system and within their body, really become more aware of what they're holding, what they're feeling. And that type of body-centered meditation, I think, allows people, if they're diligent with it, to excavate kind of what they've stored and gain awareness as to what it's about.
I love that. Do you have a recommended like amount of time, frequency, or protocol for meditation?
Not really, because it differs, you know, it's going to differ from person to person, but I think a time of day, I would recommend people to start their day like that. Get
Mhm.
up,
Yeah.
meditate a little bit, you know, really ground. And some people also benefit from doing it before they go to bed, because as we go throughout our day, we also accumulate a lot of energy within our system that just needs to be kind of ground off so that we can have a more peaceful night. So I think morning and night, however much time you can spend or feel inclined to spend, I think it's a really good practice.
Yeah. The best meditation is probably the one that you'll do, right?
That's right. And everyone's different. And some people like moving meditations, other people like sitting meditations, etc. So,
I love that. Okay, so let's talk like longevity optimization. Someone comes in and wants to optimize everything. Where do you start with labs? What do you think are the most important labs?
well, definitely almost everyone, I do a full chemistry panel because it gives me so many clues as to their metabolism. So I look at, you know, their hemoglobin A1C, their inflammatory markers, their homocysteine level, their lipid levels, as well as full hormone panels. So I do very thorough thyroid testing, full adrenal cortical hormone panels, including cortisol, DHEA sulfate, pregnenolone, um, free and total testosterone, estradiol, and growth hormone metabolite IGF-1. And so you get a really good sense of the kind of endocrine milieu from that type of testing, which I feel, you know, I started right out of the gate in 1998 as a bioidentical hormone balancing physician, and it's really served me well with tens of thousands of patients now over the years, just optimizing people's hormone balance.
I love that. I'm 33, so I'm not yet there, but certainly like when I get to perimenopause and menopause, I'm most certainly going to be doing, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy.
Oh
I,
my God, yeah.
I mean, it's so sad that I think there's still a lot of misinformation out there.
Not
Um,
anymore, because drop the mic, that 10 million woman study just came out.
I saw that. I'm
Yeah.
hoping a lot of women see it though.
I know, that's the sad part. But I mean, it was so vindicating for me, because it was basically saying what I've been saying ever since that Women's Health Initiative study came out in 2002 and scared most women off of hormones. But because I was a hormone balancing physician at that point, what I saw were women kind of crawling back in, just feeling absolutely miserable and wanting to try something to feel better. And so the only silver lining that I think came from that experience was that we used to think it was necessary to kind of recapitulate uh, more youthful hormone levels, like hormone levels of our 20s and our 30s, in order to get women to feel good. We thought, for example, you needed estradiol levels in, 55 or higher to protect your bones, et cetera. And that did not really need to be the way it was. So what I did learn in those early days post Women's Health Initiative study was that I could help women to feel just as well with slightly lower doses. And really, I could do that because I really paid attention to the balance of all the hormones.
Mhm.
So, if you're not doing that, you have to be a little more heavy-handed with one of them. But if you're looking at not only, let's say, in a female, treating estradiol and progesterone, but also testosterone, and then the adrenal cortical hormones that are precursors to the production of estradiol and testosterone, such as DHEA, pregnenolone, and you're optimizing thyroid with it, and that, paying attention to the kind of symphony, the perfect symphony of all your hormones, allowed me to use lower doses of any one of them. And that seemed to be safe for a lifetime. And that really bore out in my practice, where I would say, compared to national averages, I just had a much, much, much lower incidence of breast cancer in the patient population, and uterine cancer, and almost all types of health problems, such as heart disease, congestive heart failure, et cetera. And so it was so vindicating to see this 10 million women study come out, where they looked at data from women, beyond age 65, that used any type of sex hormone, replacement. So Premarin, horse urine, estrogen, Provera, synthetic progestin, to natural estradiol with natural progesterone, whether the estradiol was transdermal or oral or vaginal. And then they compared, hormone users of all types to non-hormone users, and saw massive improvements, kind of like a 20 something percent reduction in all cause mortality and breast cancer, colon cancer. I don't have the actual percentages at my fingertips, but we're talking, 19% reduction in breast cancer, reduction in uterine cancer, reduction in heart disease, congestive heart failure, stroke, cognitive decline, et cetera. And when
That's
they started to parse out the data, they, certainly it was no big surprise to find that natural estradiol was superior to other forms of estrogen, and natural progesterone was superior to synthetic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so sad that it takes, in Western medicine, obviously, if a woman comes to you, you're probably going to go right in, look at the hormones, and then want to optimize them. But just in Western medicine, I feel like it's difficult. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but they're pretty worrisome in terms of what percentage of women that are knowingly going through menopause or perimenopause are even spoken about hormone replacement therapy.
I know. Or they're just put on a birth control pill or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really too bad. And then there was that arbitrary cutoff too, where women were, it was thought that if you're going to use hormones, it's safe to do it for 5 years, but then beyond 5 years, it's no longer safe. And I'd always be like, show me the data on that. Like, where did you come up with that? That's so it is no longer thought to be the case after this big study came out. So if you need hormones for quality of life and even for reduction of risk for various diseases, it's safe to do it for a lifetime.
And just to kind of set the record straight for anyone that's listening, anyone concerned about breast cancer and hormones, that's been disproven. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, like, I certainly, if someone had an estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, I don't think I would use estrogen with them. But
Mhm.
but if you don't have a current cancer, your risk for getting cancer is going to be lower if you use hormones. So that is now proven. And I have always thought that because smaller studies have indicated that previously, and that is that when you maintain a healthy milieu in the body, your immune system works better, the cells know how to behave better. So it is just the case.
I mean, it makes so much sense, right? Aging is essentially the process of the negative things increasing and the positive things decreasing, essentially.
Yeah. And like, what I also found, like I said, the silver lining of 2002 was that I was able to use lower doses and help women feel just as good. And so it's not, if you look at an untreated menopausal woman's estradiol level, for example, it varies from about, well, even less than 5 to about 50.
Mm.
And probably in the in our ancient history when we had less stressful lives and we're better nourished and we're living closer to nature, we probably actually were on the upper end of that non-treated reference range naturally.
Mm.
Our adrenals were in better shape, we were better able to make estradiol, our adrenals were better able to make estradiol after menopause. And so that's kind of always been my feeling of like, let's just try to recreate optimal circumstances
Are you
because
seeing the stats seem to say like substantial decreases in testosterone, even younger men? Is that what you're seeing?
yes, because I've been measuring for all these years now, and that is what I'm seeing. Yeah, younger men have way lower testosterone than they used to, and uh, it really can help mental clarity, memory, motivation, drive, body composition, and sexual performance and libido to optimize the hormones for men. And it's not that hard to do, but it needs to be done carefully, in my opinion. And when it's, unfortunately, that's not often the case. So I spend a lot of my time kind of like unwinding these kind of hormonal hot messes that men
Mm.
have found themselves in because they, have been given, let's say, testosterone pellets or really high dose injectable testosterone, and no doctors are checking how they're being metabolized in their bodies. So they don't look at the downstream metabolite of DHT, which is really bad for the prostate, can cause hair loss. They don't look at the aromatization of testosterone into estradiol, and then that is bad for the prostate as well. It can cause gynecomastia or breast development in men. That doesn't go away when they fix the hormones. That stays. So sometimes
Mm.
men actually have to go have like surgery to remove the
Wow.
breast tissue. Yeah. So I've seen it cause extra capsular prostate cancer in men when it's done improperly. So it's not it so I guess what the bottom line is, it's really a good thing to balance hormones, but it has to be done with respect and done properly because the body is subtle. There's a delicate balance in the body that needs to be respected and considered.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you have a preferred do you obviously so not pellets,
I don't like
injectables?
I do not like hormone pellets at all for women or men. I just have found them to be very difficult. I've never put them in, but I see so many people that have bad results. So
Mm,
that's the thing. Because when you put a pellet in, you're stuck with it. You
yeah.
cannot take it out. I've had people come and they actually have like massive infections at the insertion site.
Oh,
And you
wow.
would think, because they have a foreign body right there, that it would be best to take that pellet out. And no doctors will do that. Like, you really damage the tissue if you have to go in there and kind of fish it out.
Mm,
So you have to put people on antibiotics, and then if the dose is wrong, you just have to live with it, for
yeah.
months. And so that is what those are the kind of like hormonal mishaps that I see and have to correct all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think like sprays or creams are better, or do
Yeah,
you
I think
guys,
I think that transdermal creams are good for women and men. I do like the bioidentical estradiol patch for women because it gives you a very even delivery, because it elaborates hormones in a very consistent manner throughout the life of the patch, and patch lasts about a half of a week. So, and if it's too high, you can always like cut some of it off. So it's
hmm,
not like permanent. You can pull that patch off if it doesn't feel good. So I do like the patch. And then for men, I like transdermal creams best of all, but sometimes for ease and just sometimes because it works better for them, injectable testosterone, and when it's done properly and dosed properly, is a good idea.
wonderful. Well, yeah, I love your approach to hormones because it's so important the provider you go to that you don't get extreme levels of some of these hormones, right?
It's so important. Yeah, because they get metabolized, and then that puts a burden on the body, and the metabolites do things as well. And so you really need to be looking at like all these downstream metabolites.
I love that. Well, okay, so to go back to testing, you do a super comprehensive blood panel. Are you looking at like gut health, toxic
Yeah.
burden?
So in addition to the basic, kind of large chemistry and blood panel that I do, I'll be testing for different things based on what the person's presenting with. So I do a lot of microbiome gene mapping and find that super beneficial. Sometimes I'll be doing food sensitivity testing, because dealing with the gut, and balancing the gut microbiome and reducing the kind of gut inflammation and leaky gut has wide reaching ramifications throughout the body. And then if I suspect mold exposure, I'm doing urine mycotoxin testing. If I suspect infectious disease, I'm going to be doing blood, maybe T cell testing for Lyme and co-infections, maybe antibody testing, maybe Western blots for viruses, viral reactivation. And I do testing for toxins. So I do provoked urine excretion testing for heavy metals. I send blood to Germany for toxin analysis, where we're looking at kind of toxins inducted to DNA, toxins lodged in cell membranes. I'll do that. I see a lot of neurodegenerative disease and people with cognitive issues. So that's a really important thing to do for that group.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you're just getting a really comprehensive picture. The body's so complex. So
Mhm.
in Western medicine, looking at a few panels is, unfortunately, you're not getting a really clear picture as to what's going on.
Yeah, and really, like you were asking, like what testing do you like for longevity? And I would say those things I just mentioned would be more not for everybody, but like, specifically if someone has a health problem we're trying to unravel. But for longevity, I actually really like biometric testing. So that's why we've developed a whole biometric testing lab here at Jyzen, because it's a window into the mitochondrial function, and it really evaluates how efficiently people make ATP from oxygen.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like the like most foundational underpinning for health and aging.
Will you walk us through, and we can use me as an example, but so your biometric testing, are you doing resting heart rate, VO2 max? Can you walk us through some of those tests? And if you don't mind, what would maybe just a general um, value be for someone like a 30-year-old woman for VO2 max? What would you be looking for?
It's not really a value, it's more like percent of predicted.
Okay.
So yeah, we do resting metabolic rate. So that is looking at how how many calories you're burning at rest. And are you burning fat at rest? Are you burning carbs at rest? Like you're getting a sense of what's happening with your metabolism, the cellular respiration at the cellular level. And that is interesting because it's directly proportional to how much muscle mass you have
Mm,
and um and your metabolic flexibility. So I really love metabolic resting metabolic rate testing because it is uh we burn most of our fat at rest, not when we're working out. So it's
mm,
really interesting. It's one of the most important markers. Then we combine that with VO2 max testing. So we're looking at what how many calories you're burning at different heart rates and how efficiently you are utilizing the oxygen and producing ATP from it at different kind of exertional levels. And this is where we can then give people, and I don't do this, we have a physiologist here at Jyzen who's incredible and really good at interpreting all of this and kind of making it actionable for people.
mhm,
But this is where we can start to advise people on how they train.
mm,
And there's certain kind of this cardio zones where you're going to burn the most fat. If let's say that's your desire, you would like to change your body composition and all reduce your body fat percentage, we can advise very specifically with how you train. Interestingly, I went through all of this. So I did the resting metabolic rate, VO2 max testing. We do spirometry. We do body composition, and then skin caliper testing because sometimes there's differences, and you've got to kind of bone debt like a DEXA scan would be the most accurate, which we are planning on getting here. Um, so I did all of this and I found some really surprising things that
mm.
I wasn't eating enough. So like I was like far under eating for my desired outcome, which was burning fat.
Mm.
And in order to burn more fat, I needed to eat approximately 1,000 more calories in a day.
Wow.
So it was a big aha, big
Mhm.
surprise.
I have not. I've done VO2, I've done a DEXA, I've done a body comp scan, but I have not done the resting metabolic rate. So I have to come visit you at Jyzen and do that.
Yeah. And then she also does like grip strength. There's so much incredible data around grip strength and longevity and your
Hmm.
risk for various types of diseases. And so, yeah, you can kind of take all this information, synthesize it, and give you kind of recommended food intake on workout days versus rest days, recommended training zones, heart rate targets, et cetera, how much time you should spend in zone 2 versus zone 3, 4, or 5.
I love that.
Mhm.
And a couple I have like a little grip strength tester at home. So I try to check my grip strength, usually like once a week. I just do that for fun to chart it, but um, I love all the data. So I love that you guys are doing that. It makes so much sense to kind of start with that. Let's talk about some of the services that you have. So you have really amazing services from Chelation to Ebu to Vasper. Um, First, what's your favorite service at Jyzen?
Gosh, I have so many favorites. Wow. Well, first, let me just back up and say that, when I was watching people age over these last few decades, I would see that oftentimes people would either develop a physical health issue or a cognitive health issues. So memory loss, cognitive decline, neurodegenerative disease, or they may have structural problems. So
Hmm.
structural problems actually affect longevity in such a big way, not only your lifespan, but your health span, because sometimes people, had injuries as a child. Maybe are holding their posture in a certain way that's kind of leading to abnormal wear and tear. Like, for example, I can relate to this because I got hit by a car as a pedestrian as a kid, and then I think it torqued my pelvis a little bit, which then
Hmm.
affected, just, kind of translated up and down in terms of my joint mechanics and stuff. So those types of body asymmetries at some point need to be unwound, or else you're going to develop, abnormal wear and tear on the joints. And then you're going to need it. So people have a need for a knee replacement, and then now it's the hip, and now they have spinal stenosis. And so then that's what ends up limiting them as they age. They're healthy, mind, healthy, they don't have diseases, but then they can't move, and then that affects their aging. So anyway, most of our services are clustered under kind of like, health, brain, body. And the common underpinning for everything is mitochondrial function. So many of our therapies are geared toward upregulating mitochondrial function. But in terms of my favorites, I would say some of the IVs we do here are incredibly powerful. So we do NAD IVs, like the brain refuel protocol, and that's helpful for stimulating mitophagy, which is where the body will, as you know, edit, repair, and replace damaged mitochondria and birth new ones. And it just improves energy production. So I love that. And I do think the EbO2 or EBOO is really helpful as well, because you're filtering the blood of impurities and ozonating it and exposing it to multiple light wavelengths, and it's going back in. And that's been a game changer for people.
Do
So I do.
you do you do EBOO like on a let's say generally healthy like you or I? Do you do EBOO like on a specific protocol or like frequency throughout the year or as needed?
It's often helpful to do 3 in a row. So it might be 1 a week for 3 weeks. And then after that, it depends, it depends on the person and what they have going on, but you could consider doing like 1 a quarter after that,
Hmm.
just
Yeah,
to
I,
kind of stay balanced.
I love that. You also do chelation, which I've heard this kind of around that maybe people over a certain age, maybe 40, um, it might be beneficial for longevity purposes to do some chelation. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts on that?
very much so. Yeah, I mean, I think just metals are heavy metals like mercury, like lead, cadmium, aluminum, etc., are fat soluble. So they tend to lodge in your cell membranes, and there's a basal level of excretion of what you're exposed to, but a lot of it just remains in storage. And then the metals can initiate free radical damage and inflammation, and it's not so, when you think about a lean person like yourself, um, it's your largest fat reservoir really is your cell membranes
Mhm.
collectively, because you don't have a lot of fat otherwise. And so that's not as big of a deal in cells that die and are turning over rapidly, like your blood cells or your intestinal cells or your liver cells. But your neurons in your brain are with you for life. So they are an incredible repository for all of these toxins. And that's why lifetime heavy metal exposure tends to kind of like accumulate in the neuron membranes and create inflammation that can lead to, damage over time, neurodegeneration, cognitive decline, etc. So it is really important to kind of routinely be checking up on your heavy metal levels. If they're a bit high, kind of pulling them out. So I do a lot of chelation with people.
That's great.
Yes.
Something slightly more accessible maybe, but do you like the idea of like doing consistent sauna and maybe doing a binder just to try to keep like a maintenance on that?
Yes, absolutely. Great way to work on upping that basal level excretion. So you would detox through the skin. I think one thing that people should pay attention to is when you get out of the sauna, like take a shower, wash your skin off, like soap, scrub it off, because you do try attempt to eliminate a lot through the skin. You don't want to just like reabsorb.
Do you like binders in with sauna?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you might be elaborating toxins that then are going to circulate through the bloodstream into the liver and then through the biliary tree and get dumped in the intestines. So those binders can be helpful for binding up what gets dumped in there so it doesn't get reabsorbed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I Sauna is such a big practice for me. I mean, I love it for so many reasons. It's relaxing. I have one here at the house and helps my sleep and keeps, my toxin levels low. I do a total toxic burden at least twice a year. If I feel like I've had exposure, I do it more often. But it kind of showed me that what I'm doing is working because I have zero toxins in the high range.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I haven't eaten a piece of like inorganic food in over a decade, but I
Yeah.
still had a little bit of glyphosate. And it just to me that like signals that this is airborne at this point or something. Because I have
Yeah.
shower water filters and filters throughout my whole house and everything is really clean, but it's tough to really like avoid these things, even if you're doing all the things.
I agree. Yeah. And it is, there is data to show that our organic food supply has been contaminated with glyphosate as well.
I know it's so sad. It's like, what do you even do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay. And then going back to eBoot real quick, just for anyone that isn't aware of what that is, do you want to talk a little bit about it and talk
Yeah.
about some of the biggest benefits?
Absolutely. So it's where you put a catheter in both arms and then you run your blood through a dialysis filtration system. And then it's exposed to ozone and multiple light wavelengths, and then it goes back in the other arm. So you're basically filtering and ozonating and exposing it to light wavelengths, and almost your entire blood gets treated. And it's really good for clearing out like fibrin and toxins for unfortunately a lot of people I see have had COVID, they have long COVID, or they've had bad reactions to vaccines for COVID. And it's really good for helping people. It's like a game changer for that. It's really good for helping people with reactivated viruses and for multi-infectious disease, as well as just being good for longevity. So that is usually how we're using it is, kind of like a small series and then just periodic touch-ups with that.
I love that. Something else we have, I think you know this, but I have a clinic in Ohio actually, even though I'm in LA, but we have EBOO and I'm so fortunate because I bring these things because I want to do them on myself. But um, something that I have not done, but it's definitely on my radar is plasmapheresis.
Yes.
So this is like I feel like becoming a lot more popular. What is plasmapheresis and what might be the benefits of the treatment?
Well, I have a colleague that's part of Jyzen who also has a separate clinic, separate from here, that I'll refer to for plasmapheresis. We don't do it here,
Oh,
but,
okay.
but it is a little bit more of a deep filtration of the blood where you're filtering out antibodies and things like that. So you do need to replace uh, albumin or IVIG in order to kind of replenish what you have taken out in order to maintain the blood, um, osmolarity and make, keep it healthy for your body. So it's a little bit more of an aggressive treatment. I will reserve that for people who have autoimmune disorders that I'm not able to help in other ways because you're clearing out autoantibodies. It's good for people that have like the adult version of autoimmune kind of neurological diseases. It's good for rheumatoid type processes like autoimmune joint problems, lupus, etc.
Yeah, I want to do it just for, kind of longevity purposes. I've heard that it can be impactful on biological age too. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm excited to try it in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you do methylene blue at your clinic. What is methylene blue, and what are some of the best benefits?
Well, it was originally a textile dye, and it has some interesting biochemistry where it can function in the body a little bit like oxygen
Mm,
can. So it originally it after being used in industry, it was discovered that was a great malaria treatment.
mhm,
And then there's been some kind of drugs that have been developed from it for treating infectious disease. It in of itself, it has awesome treatment for infectious disease. So it's great for people with chronic infections. Like I use it with my Bartonella patients, people who have chronic urinary tract infections, etc. But what some of the most exciting things that it does for me in my practice and the population of people I see is it's really helpful for cognitive function. Like for example, some recent data shows that it will reduce the clumping of the tau protein seen
mm,
in Alzheimer's, and actually can also deaggregate clumped tau protein in people with Alzheimer's.
mm.
So again, it's kind of improving cellular respiration, um, maybe as a bridge when you're trying to upregulate mitochondrial function and trying to optimize the amount of energy someone can produce from oxygen. So it can act like a bridge. It's something that's in every emergency department around the world because it's good for people that have had cyanide poisoning or um, carbon monoxide poisoning, where their ability to carry oxygen is being compromised. So it's life-saving in those kind of situations. But from an optimization standpoint, it's really good for cognitive function. And I'll use it whenever I feel like I'm maybe catching a virus or something. I'll like do a couple squirts orally. We do it intravenously as well, but I'll do it orally. Then I'll hop in our Novithor, which is one of my favorite technologies that we have here, which is a red light bed. And the methylene blue works on the mitochondrial enzymes to upregulate their function. Red light works on a different mitochondrial enzyme. And so together they synergize to improve energy production in the mitochondria.
I love that. Yeah, I have just some troches, the methylene blue troches, and I stack those two together as well. What are your favorite, or what is your go-to like red light therapy protocol, like frequency, just for overall health optimization? Would you do it every day, every other day?
Yeah. Actually, I would say about 3 times a week for 20 minutes. We have we have 3 Novithor beds here, and that's
Nice.
my favorite. And it looks like a tanning bed, but it's not. It's got, you get in and you close the lid, and it's red and near infrared light wavelengths. And exposure to red light is like a lot of our kind of biohacking therapy, sauna, exercise, even cryo, etc. There's a bell-shaped curve of dose. And if you don't do enough, you don't get much benefit. If you do too much, it can be detrimental. The bell shape, the kind of the optimal zone is between 12 and 20 minutes, 3 times a week is usually about right.
And do you usually space it out? So maybe do it on a Monday and then skip Tuesday and then Wednesday, or does it not
Yeah.
matter?
I tend to do that, but then there are exceptions to this. Like if you've had an injury or something, you can kind of do it daily, not more than the amount of time though per day. But
Hmm.
like for example, one time I was in a hotel and got up at night to use the bathroom and came back to the bed in the pitch black dark and thought I was like rounding the corner and there was forgot there was like a half wall with a coffee bar.
Mm.
Mashed my forehead,
Oh,
got a huge gash, had to give a talk the next day, like next Saturday. And so I went in every single day, and I could see the changes from morning to night every day. Like it was so instrumental in the healing.
I,
Incredible.
I love that. Yeah, I recently actually had a breast explant. So I had my implants removed and I used red light therapy. And of course, I've never done it before, so I can't have a comparison, but I healed so quickly, so quickly.
Amazing.
So,
That's
um,
great.
yeah, absolutely. So, what about the hypoxic training? I don't have a ton of experience with that. What do you see the benefits and what does that kind of look like?
Okay. Well, there's two ways to do it. There's actually three ways to do it, but
Mm,
we have two out of the three here right now, and we'll soon have three out of the three. But one of the technologies that we have is a room of installation of six machines called Cell Gym, and that's resting kind of more passive intermittent hypoxic treatment. And so it's where you're laying in a zero gravity chair, you're breathing oxygen through a mask, and the coach will cycle you from normal levels of oxygen to mild hypoxia and back 4 times in a 40-minute session. And what that's like is being at sea level and going up to altitude and coming down and up and down 4 times. And the benefit of that is actually was discovered, and three scientists won the Nobel Prize for discovering something called HIF-1 alpha, which is a compound that's released from this type of therapy. So in 2019, they won the Nobel Prize for discovering that compound and also for discovering like the effects of it. So what this is a master gene regulator that triggers the transcription of thousands of genes in the
wow.
body that are involved in how we utilize oxygen and how our mitochondria function and how much ATP we can produce from oxygen. So it's it's incredible. Like one treatment is not going to do a lot for you, but if you do a series of 30 treatments or so, you're going to have like a sustained release of HIF-1 alpha, and it's going to kind of lead to all of these downstream mechanisms that will help you be more efficient in how you utilize oxygen. It enhances, for example, like the amount of red blood cells you have. So you can carry oxygen around better. It enhances the sprouting of little capillaries into the tissue, so you have better oxygen delivery into the tissues. It enhances the coupling of oxygen with the first enzyme in the electron transport chain of the mitochondria, so that you have more efficient ATP production from that. And then from a clinical standpoint, there is loads of research on it. And so it's been shown to be really good for metabolic syndrome. So improving kind of your insulin receptor sensitivity, you're reducing your blood sugar, kind of like actually enhancing the routing of glucose back into your cells where it belongs for the generation of energy. It actually has been shown to help neurodegenerative diseases. It helps cognitive decline, peripheral neuropathy, actually helps human fertility in both men and women.
Mm,
Um, Respiratory disease, cardiovascular diseases, kind of you name it. It's incredible. There's a large amount of clinical research on it. So,
wow.
um, anyway, if someone has the patience to do 40-minute treatments for 30 times, like that over time is really going to move the needle with their health. And then, so that's the resting, kind of more passive form of it. And then we also do a more active form of altitude training, which produces the same effect.
Mm,
So this is where you're exercising. Let's say you're riding on a stationary bike and then you're breathing oxygen through a mask and it's hooked up to, you probably have seen it, Kayla, the Livo 2
hmm.
device.
Is it the e-watch?
So you can do EWAT, which is different, but this is intermittent hypoxic training with exercise.
Okay. Yeah, actually, now that you say that, I think about that device.
Yeah, so you can like, have people It's almost like maybe you've heard a lot of biohackers who will run up a hill and try to hold their breath when they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're trying to basically exert your body with reduced levels of oxygen. Someone gave an analogy and they said, if you're trying to teach a child how to manage money, do you think you would do a better job teaching them that way, how to manage money, if you gave them $10,000 allowance a week, or if you gave them a small amount of money per week? Like, they're probably going to become more frugal. They're going to be like more efficient with their expenditure, if they have a small amount of money to work with. So it's kind of like that. You're trying to train the body to become more efficient at generating energy from less oxygen. And you're upregulating all those mechanisms that are involved in that.
I love that. Yeah, that's something I don't have a ton of experience with, but I find so fascinating and I'm so excited about. I kind of have I enjoy the more oxygen part. I've done like a lot of hyperbarics and then
Yeah.
have familiarity with the EWAP, but that's so exciting. I can't wait to in general come down and check you guys out. You're in such a perfect location.
I know.
Um so I mean, yeah, and just like based off of a quick, dive on your website, you guys do literally have like probably the most comprehensive set of longevity tech that I've seen. So that is so exciting. And it's great that you guys are doing this. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been a pleasure.
This podcast is for informational purposes only, and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Kayla Barnes, does not accept responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of their guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.